Honorable members of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, Ms. Boima Sekoma, Secretary General of the SADC Parliamentary Forum, Your Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives of international organizations and United Nations agencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, all protocols observed. It is an honor and a pleasure to participate in this final stage of the consultative session on the SADC model on gender-based violence with the United Nations agencies and donor partners. Let me start by congratulating the SADC Parliamentary Forum and the Regional Women Parliamentarians Caucus for this crucial initiative. The motion to develop the model on gender-based violence was unanimously adopted at the 44th Plenary Assembly session held in Maputo, Mozambique in 2018, and was the beginning of a critical process to address the current shortfalls in national GBV registration and prolonged implementation gaps. Distinguished guests, since 2019, UNFPA has supported this process, starting with the first consultative meeting with the SADC Regional Women's Caucus held in Johannesburg in September 2019. Over the past 2 years, UNFPA has been privileged to work with the SADC Parliamentarian Forum to galvanize a broad range of stakeholders from regional economic commissions, civil society organizations, UN agencies, universities, and research institutions towards the development of the SADC model on GBV. We are delighted that we are now concluding the consultative process before the much anticipated adoption of the comprehensive model. As you know, achieving zero gender-based violence and harmful practice is a key priority for UNFPA globally and in the East and Southern region. Gender-based violence is a persistent threat to peace, security, and socio-economic development in the region, where a third of women have experienced physical and or sexual intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Over the past 18 months, the socio-economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and simultaneous humanitarian crisis resulting from both conflict and natural disasters in the SADC region have increased the risk of physical and sexual violence for women and girls. The role of parliaments in legislating and examining government's policies and budgets during crisis and recovery is key to curtailing deepening gender inequality and escalating violence. Data shows that in 2021, 19 African Union member states still do not have specific national legislation on domestic violence. Where laws exist, these are often limited in scope and coverage or are poorly enforced. The current implementation gap is failing women and girls. Lawmakers in the SADC region must protect women's fundamental rights to make decisions over their bodies and over their futures. This includes the reform and enforcement of laws and policies that criminalize all forms of violence and harmful practices, and crucially support the provision and access to sexual and reproductive services and reproductive rights. Laws must also seek to empower women and girls, particularly those most likely to be left behind, including adolescent girls, women and girls in rural areas, and those with disabilities. We must ensure that marginalized and disadvantaged women and girls are enabled to make decisions and govern their bodies by providing them with a full range of sexual and reproductive health services and information, investing in comprehensive sexuality education, and working with men and boys as allies and champions for gender equality to change norms and behaviors. Without these legislative actions, the promise of the ICPD program of action, the Sustainable Development Goal, and the African Union aspirations of the Africa we want will remain out of reach. Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, we see the SADC model on GBV as a critical tool to ending all forms of gender-based violence and harmful practice by 2030. As models are based on the best norms and practices contained in generally accepted international instruments, the SADC model on GBV is a vital instrument, along with the SADC model on child marriage and HIV achieve SDG 5 on gender equality and its targets. As we have seen with the SADC model on child marriage, model laws also act as catalysts for the domestication of treaties and covenants, as they contain similar norms and are further adopted to the Southern African context. The SADC model will also assist SADC member states to harmonize their GBV response, providing a cohesive regional approach to response and prevention mechanisms. Honorable members of Parliament, distinguished guests, UNFPA remains committed to support and accompany adoption and post-adoption process. The SADC model will only fulfill its potential if it is understood and adequately used by those whose duty is to provide an enabling legal and policy framework. Those who develop and implement programs and interventions to prevent and address gender-based violence. UNFPA looks forward to strengthening our important partnership with the SADC Parliamentary Forum as we continue to work together to support the domestication of the GBV model in the SADC countries. Congratulations once again for coming this far. In this decade of action to deliver the SDGs, it is such actions that are building toward the full realization of the rights and choices of women and girls every day and in every way. I thank you for your attention.